Hi, I'm Jeremy from Willow Landscaping. We started our business back in 2005 and we launched Dust Clear Tools, which is a silica dust collection system for hardscapers in 2018. Love the industry, can't imagine anything else, and I'm a hardscaper.
Welcome to the I Am a Hardscaper series on the How to Hardscape podcast, where we sit down and interview a hardscape business owner and do a deep dive on how they became a hardscaper and how they operate their business. If you want to learn more about becoming a hardscaper, check out members.howtohardscape.com to get access to our membership platform. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right, Jeremy, let's get started to get to know a little bit more about yourself, how you got started in the industry. Can you give our audience a little bit more of a context about how you yourself got interested in hardscaping, landscaping, and what developed to today where you are?
Sure. So Willow Landscaping was founded in 2005. I've always been in the green industry. That's the only thing I've ever done. That's all I know. My brother and I were in partnership in the early years, and at first, hardscape we thought was very specialized and we didn't want to touch it. So if somebody called and asked about hardscaping, that was not Willow Landscaping. We did a few really tiny retaining walls, but we kind of stayed out of that market. Then my brother was really intrigued by the whole concept of hardscaping, and we discovered that landscaping could get a little thin about August, like a hot and dry. The spring work was all done and the fall work hadn't started yet. It could be a little tough to get the crew going. So he thought that hardscaping could be a very good fit for us just to fill in that summer lull there. And he built a patio for himself, and that was kind of introduction to hardscaping. I think that's 2006, our second year in business, he did that. And by 2007, we were really pursuing that market.
Gotcha. So is this kind of where your passion kind of lies with the hardscaping? Is it the whole outdoor living space thing? I've seen your Instagram. I've featured you through the How to Hardscape Instagram page. I know the beautiful projects you're putting together. Where does your passion lie? Is it towards the hardscaping? Is it towards the landscaping? Is it the whole entire bundle with Willow Landscaping?
Great question. So in the early years, it's really my brother's pet project. Okay. I sold them. I helped a little bit of installation, but he really headed up the hardscape jobs. I headed up the landscape jobs. And we were in partnership for 5 years until 6 years, till he went to chase his dream of a family dairy farm. So when he left, that meant that I couldn't just sell the projects. I also needed to really understand them better and be out in the field installing them as well. So I went from just selling it, kind of dabbling, getting my hands dirty with the hardscape, to being out there every day on the hardscape projects. And I learned to love it pretty quickly. So you asked the question, where's my passion lie today? Well, that's a tough question. So we've went from being just a landscaper doing some hardscaping to being probably 70% hardscape. And we act as a general contractor on a lot of our projects. We're bringing in all kinds of trades, gas, electric, carpenters, plumbing. So to answer your question, outdoor living spaces kind of encapsulates all of that. We've been seeing a lot of trends towards attached roofs rather than just doing a separate pavilion. We're doing an attached roof to their house. So they walk out their patio door and they're right in their outdoor space. And it's got a roof over it, heaters. It's kind of extension of their living room. And so I'd say it's kind of where our passion lies. There's one thing that I really enjoy about hardscaping. If you look at my pictures, probably two things are going to stand out. One is there's a lot of lighting. I love doing the lighting, and I like intricate patterns. And we do some modern takes on that, but I really like a challenging project with something interesting, not just a cookie cutter rectangular patio. I want something a little bit more than that.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things along this journey from where you started to where you are today that I want to touch on. I know, have had articles featured in hardscape.com, the magazine there, Hardscape Magazine. You, I know, are involved in ICPIA training and education, obviously giving back to the industry, as well as with Dust Killer Tools. is a big part of, yourself, your own brand, your own imaging. Why is that so important to you? Starting with like the education aspect of things, the Hardscape magazine articles to the ICPI training and education. Why is that so important to you?
That's really how we got to where we are today. So we went for ICPI certifications in 2008. So we've had like 1.5 seasons under our belt at that point. And in 2007, we'd done a really large project, our first six-figure job in our history. And that was probably split between hardscaping and landscaping. It was probably about 30% hardscape, 70% landscape in that figure. And we took that course, after that job was wrapped up. We learned a few tips in that course that literally saved us days of cutting. There's this huge circular walkway that we cut one paver at a time. And now, we lay it past the edge, mark it, and we cut from one end to the other, cut in place, so much faster, nicer cuts, just it's a win-win-win. And we look back and said, wow, if only we had known that. So that was kind of our introduction to ICPI early in 2008. We took that course. My brother took the NCMA course right after that. I didn't take that till a couple of years later. And it was after my brother left that I kind of looked back and said, we're sort of an average hardscaper. And Jeremy doesn't do average very well. We were average, let's face it. We did okay work. We did pretty good work, especially after we got a couple of seasons under our belt, and had a better idea what we're doing. You use heavier compaction equipment, start using geotextile on every project. Our quality was good, but we weren't exceptional. And I really wanted to go to the next level and say, we're good, not just average. So I started taking a bunch of extra courses. At the time, EP Henry had what they called MOTS, Mid-Atlantic Hardscape Trade Show. A really good show. It's about 3 days worth of education there, little mini trade show. Really a really good event. Considering it's sponsored by one manufacturer, they did an amazing job with it. And I took mostly courses geared towards advanced installation. And this was not necessarily ICPI courses. It's just different speakers, engineers, contractors they brought in. Again, they did a great job with that. Following up from that, I did take ICPI's residential specialist. Again, a 2-day course, but it just takes everything in the first course and really builds on it. And I also took the PICP, which would be permeable interlocking concrete pavement. I took that course as well. And I teach all 3 courses along with NCMA. That's our W Basic Installer course. So why do I do that? Why do I believe in it? So if you look back to those first days or first years of taking those courses, we were in the industry, but weren't really in the industry, okay? We were doing the work, but we didn't know anybody. I walked into an event as a guy kind of just walking around, didn't know anybody, and didn't have many connections in the industry. Wasn't following different magazines. Instagram back then was probably non-existent, much when that was launched. It's just, we weren't really connected to the industry. And I got to know some really good people. So my early heroes, look at Bill Gardocki, different ICPI instructors, Paver Pete. I learned a lot from them, taking us from that average hardscaper I did not want to be to where we are today. I wanted to pay that forward. So somewhere around 2015, I got to thinking, I could probably do this. I could probably teach classes too. And that's kind of a dream was born then. I went another year or two until I actually got into it. But that's kind of why I do what I do today. I love the industry. I see how much others have helped me, answering my questions, teaching those courses. I'm just trying to pay it forward.
Definitely. And that's really evident that you are indeed doing that. And that brings me to Dust Killer Tools. Whereabouts in this journey does that initial kind of bug get placed in your head where you start to develop and to test and to then launch what you did with dust extraction systems?
Great question. So 2015, I think there are some murmurs about this coming along. And the very first project we had featured in Hardscape magazine was a poolside patio. I forget what year that was as featured. And I remember my supplier coming out, walking around. There's not a straight wall in that project. I mean, everything's curved. He's like, wow, it's a lot of cutting. He's like, I don't know. We might have to design no cut patios after this once this new law takes effect. And I'm like, that's not Willow Gates, you know. We do some modern patios, but back then we didn't do any. And the idea of doing straight lines to avoid cuts was really kind of insulting to me. I didn't like that idea at all. And so it's around 2016, then we had a final date when it was going to go into effect. And I think June 30th of 2017 was a date for general construction. And so we started getting serious about this. And we started buying different attachments, different things we wanted to try. And we rented a dust collector, went out to a job site, and we blew dust everywhere. Like, okay, this is not working. Why not? And I didn't understand airflow. I didn't understand a lot of things back then. And so my first thought was, well, we need a bigger dust collector. So we found somebody with a massive dust collector, 2000 CFM, and talked them into allowing us to do some demonstrations with it. Went over to our shop, hooked up these attachments I bought for ourselves, made a few cuts, and blew dust everywhere all over again. It's only then that I began to realize the relationship between your diameter of the attachment ports and also of the ductwork going back to a dust collector. And we were running 2.5 or 3-inch lines. You can't physically pull enough air through those small lines. So with dust collector tools, we ended up running 6-inch lines for our handheld saws, 8-inch line to our table saw. It sounds massive, it sounds overkill, but we've done the testing on airflow, and we know how much we can flow through a 4-inch line for a grinder, a 6-inch line for a handheld saw, 8-inch line for a table saw. And we know how far we can run those lines, how much hose can we run, how far away from the dust collector can we operate. We know all that now. Back then, we didn't understand any of that. And all we knew was nothing worked. And this clearly was not going to pass OSHA's inspection if we were still blowing dust clouds everywhere, despite using a dust collector. So it kind of started out with frustration with what we were looking at. We also knew that we're spending somewhere around $20,000 to set up our crew with what we're looking at the time, or what we're trying out. And that seemed a little bit crazy.
Now, yeah, I mean, talk about the development of all these things. Like, you've got Willow Gates Landscaping on one side, you got Dust Killer Tools. That's in and of itself a lot of juggling, I'm sure. It's I can't imagine being in your shoes and being able to, take on all these different projects, as well as to be trying to give back to the industry in the way you are doing. Which brings me to a question that kind of just popped into my head. How do you balance all this stuff? What are you doing in Willow Gates Landscaping that allows you to, say, take on a side project, not even a side project, a whole new business in Dust Killer Tools, and also to allow yourself to do these, be an instructor and to write these articles? What are you doing?
I'm not balancing it well at all. It's like a juggler just learning how to juggle, and I'm dropping a lot of balls, okay?
Yeah.
So great question, and I don't have a great answer for you. I can tell you that some that went hand in hand, like a lot of the R&D, some of the testing for Dust Killer Tools was being done on a Willow Gates job site. In fact, all that R&D was being done on our job sites. So we didn't start out wanting to do a dust collection business. That was not our goal. Our goal was we wanted to keep our crew safe, meet the OSHA specs, and that's all I really cared about. And once we spent a year trying to get the system to work and getting like 90% there, and we were like, well, if we're 90% there, we spend all this money, why can we not produce it for other people? And so that's kind of what launched Dust Killer Tools. Now, I will say, going from a working prototype to production is a far bigger step than I ever realized. And had I known, I might be a little more cautious jumping into this new adventure. And it's a big step. I didn't realize how big a step it was. But how do I juggle all that? like I said, I dropped some balls. There's no way around that. Having a decent crew working for me at Willow Gates certainly helps. We are a small company, and we typically run about 5 people, plus myself. We're in the process of expanding. Really, the limitation to Willow Gates growth and for Best Color Tools as well is myself. That's Jeremy. Okay. That is what's limiting our growth. I can't do it all. And so I've pushed some of the work off onto my crew. I have a bunch of ads running right now for a salesperson, also for a secretary. Right now, I have a part-time secretary just taking care of accounts payable. I want somebody answering that phone every day. And if you look at the home improvement industry as a whole across the last 18 months, there's been incredible demand. I mean, I hate the word unprecedented because it's like so overused. Everybody uses it, and I just don't like that word anymore. But it really is. Like when we last seen this kind of, I don't know what kind of term you want to use it, but the market for home improvement is crazy. But the service has gone down as demand has gone up. And Willow Gates is no exception to that. And you reach a point where you just don't care. And that's not what Willow Gates is supposed to stand for. We want to have good relationships with our clients and with our crew and with our suppliers. And the relationship with the clients I felt was slipping because we couldn't keep up with handling new leads coming in, trying to act as a GC on different rather large projects and supervise landscape and hardscape crews and keep up with filing permits, final revisions to designs. And so finally I stepped back. So this is broken. Okay. This is really, really broken. I'm not having fun. I mean, it's a point where I don't really enjoy going to work anymore. Something has to change. So part of that is trying to get dedicated office staff to take some burden off of me. And I also changed my voicemail greeting, changed all the autoresponders for our website inquiries saying, we won't take any new sales leads until January 15th. You can let a message. Don't expect a phone call back until January 15th. We'll begin processing all those leads and try to hopefully have them caught up by end of January because I'm trying to answer new leads, trying to keep up with the existing projects kind of in progress. It wasn't working. It wasn't satisfying anybody. So another step is like I couldn't imagine doing this, but that's the reality. It's like, why? I don't want more leads. I hate the phone call. I don't like the phone ringing. And I used to enjoy that. Again, you can't satisfy anybody, trying to satisfy everybody. So that's kind of steps we've taken to try to balance things a little bit. Hopefully next year is a little smoother. We all know this craze is going to end sometime. What will normal be in the future? I have absolutely no idea. I really don't. One contractor asked me, said, when normal comes back, will we recognize it? Fair question. Will we actually recognize what normal is? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And, trying to understand, we're in a really high demand period of time. What is normal demand? What is that going to look like? Did this change the way people look at their outdoor spaces? And even though demand was here back then, now it's here. Is it going to be somewhere in the middle? Or did everyone, where is that demand going to be in the future? It's anybody's best question. And that's, you highlighted a struggle that I experienced this year, and many others are going through the same thing, trying to keep that level of service up at the level of business that you are today. It just got increasingly difficult, and it's interesting to hear you kind of talk through that. That being said, what is your role in your business today? What are you handling, like leads, sales, and also trying to be in the field as much as possible? What does like a normal day in the life of Jeremy look like at Willow Gates?
So I meet my crew in the office in the morning and see them off. Depending what the project is, I'll go out to our job site. I was a little embarrassed to admit that these hands weren't very calloused anymore. They really weren't. I don't work in the field a lot. Now, last month, we're trying to push to meet some deadlines. I was out in the field more. Again, I kind of shut down the incoming leads intentionally. And average day, I rarely spend one half a day on a job site. For me to work an entire day on the job site is rare. I've done a little bit more of that in the recent weeks, but generally speaking, my day is stopping at least one of the job sites, maybe a meeting or two, and being in the office. So what all did I do within Willow Gates? There's some supervision there, with the hardscape, depending on how complicated the project is. I do go out there for initial layout. And there's certain parts that I try to be there for at least a few hours. And my crew has progressed to a point where they can do a lot of work without me being there. And sometimes it's a challenge to step back and say, okay, I've taught you the best I can. Now go make mistakes, learn the rest of it yourself. That's hard to do. But at a certain point, they've got to learn a little bit by, it's a little hard to go and release that and let that process work itself out. So I do handle all the design work, all the design estimating. I enjoy that part. I like designing projects with clients. That's really what gets me kind of excited. But so the idea of bringing in another salesperson is kind of intimidating in a way. Like, okay, that's Jeremy's job. Someone else is going to put their stamp on these projects. And I step back again and say, well, you know what? That's okay, because Jeremy's not reaching around. This person can't do it all anymore. So somewhere, if Willow Gates is going to continue growing, I'd release some of those roles. And so we're kind of in the process of getting through that.
Gotcha. So let's get into the process a little bit. From lead to sales. A lead comes into your business, whether that's through your email contact form on your website, whether that's through a social channel or a phone call. Where are you initially taking that to understand whether or not this client is a good fit for Willow Gates? What kind of questions are you asking? What kind of systems and processes do you have in place to ensure that they are a good fit and you're willing to go out and meet with them?
Great question. So we get probably 75% of our leads through our website. I'm just pulling numbers out of the air, but somewhere around there, majority of leads come through our website. The rest are referrals. We do zero print marketing. We killed that in 2015. We had some marketing that did really good for a number of years. We tried different things. And one thing that really worked well is Valpak. It's a little blue envelope, comes with a bunch of coupons in. Like, why would somebody spend $40,000 on a patio because they found a $200 coupon in Valpak? But they did, and it worked well. But in 2014, it's like, wow, this last mailing didn't do so well. And 2015 completely died. And I said, well, all that money is going into our website and social media marketing. And so that's the last print marketing we did back in 2015. Since then, strictly online. So we do get a few leads through our social media. Most people are contacting us through our website. Really, to put a number on how many come through a website versus social media versus phone calls, we don't do any print marketing, so it's pretty much online or referrals. So referrals most times come through a phone, sometimes through a website as well. It's not often somebody sees us on social media and contacts us through that channel. It happens once in a while. Most times they're going to our website first, checking us out a little further, and submitting a form there. So my form on the website will capture their name, phone number, email address, and the basic details of their project. And they can add some more comments there if they like. When I call them back, or we should say before I call them back, I've already pulled up their home on Google Maps. I know what kind of neighborhood it's in. I don't necessarily check to see what the income level is there. I just look at what's the size of the lot, what the houses look like, and I've got a pretty good idea are they going to be a good fit for me or not. And so when I call them up, I already have that pulled up. I know how far it is from our shop. Is this something that's too far? Is it within our service radius? Do we want this job? And then we start just walking through the process with them, what they want to have done. And I try to get them to talk. I ask a lot of questions. What do you want to have done? Oh, they want a patio. Okay. Well, do you have any idea how large it might be? And sometimes they have a really good idea. Sometimes they have like no idea. We want a kitchen with it. Do any kind of shade structure? Any landscaping? Is the site level? Is it sloped? We need a retaining wall, steps, different things, trying to get a sense of how detailed this project will be. And I don't do square foot pricing. I did that to start way back in 2006 because it's all we didn't know how to build a quote. We went to our supplier and said, what's the square foot price? Well, average back then was somewhere around 10 to 12. All right. Now we know what we're selling pavers for. That's how we started. But now I do know. But I still have a ballpark per square foot cost. So Mrs. Smith says, well, we think we want, maybe a 20 by 30 patio, maybe a seating wall here, some lighting. Do you want a fire feature? Oh, yeah, we did want a fire pit. Well, do you think it'd be wood burning or gas burning? What's the difference? Well, one, your fire pit costs you, 2,000, 2,500, but we have to be at least 15 feet from any combustible surface. So that means I'd be 15 feet away from your house, 15 feet away from the pergola, fences, gas fire pits. We got a 36-inch, it's only 3 feet, but you're going to spend closer to 5,000 until you get all plumbing done. So he talked through different things, and then once get an idea of what all they're trying to do, I said, well, just some ballpark numbers. What you're describing to me sounds like a $20 or $30 project, or maybe 60 to 100, whatever. Throw out some numbers, what I think they might be at. A kitchen. I'll tell them, you want a kitchen? Well, your minimum, very basic grill island, figure at least 10,000 to start. And the most complicated one we ever did, some people have zero idea what things might cost. Some come in with very realistic budgets. We're thinking, well, our feature, that sounds realistic. Or I'll come back and say, you know what? I don't think that's going to work. But we at least had a conversation because there's always that person who thinks they can get a concrete paver patio for the cost of a poured concrete slab. And it does not work that way. I don't want to block out time on my schedule, go meet them, spend half an hour to an hour driving to their home, another hour or more meeting them, and then find out that, oh, by the way, the budget's 3,000, and for us to do it, we're looking somewhere in the 20s. There's no point in me meeting them. So budget has to come up in that first conversation. And there's some people who have absolutely zero idea, and they have no idea what size it's going to be. They have no idea. They don't know. They don't know. They truly don't know what they don't know. And in that case, I'll tell them, well, we rarely do a project under, say, 20,000. We just don't really do that. But our average project's probably in the $30,000 to $50,000 range. And just get the reaction. That's pretty telling. And soon you'll know whether or not they have a budget that's realistic. So that's kind of starting point. Go out to their home. We'll walk through a job site. I want to find out their pain points. I ask more questions. How are you going to use this space? Are you planning on spending time with your family? Is it just the two of you? Do you have children coming home? Are the children home now? Do you have grandchildren coming home? Do you entertain a lot? How many people will be using this space? We talk about 10 people, 20 people, 30 people. What are we designing for? I've had some people come in and ask for a 3,500 square foot patio. I said, well, number one, it's going to be really expensive. Number two, you're going to feel lost in it. So let's think about being a little more intentional how we design this. So it's small enough to feel intimate, that you actually like it. You aren't out in some concrete jungle. And yet it's big enough to host the parties you want to host. So find the pain points. Sometimes they've had a really bad experience with another contractor. Try to figure out what went wrong. What did that person mess up? Well, he didn't get it. He just didn't get it. Well, he didn't listen to me. So what did he understand? How did ask questions? The biggest thing. Then I think a lot of people are moving towards a paid consultation format. To date, we have not done that. The initial consultation has been free, especially in today's market. We are reconsidering that. We do have a retainer fee to start any kind of design work. If you want an exact quote from me, Mrs. Smith, I'm sorry. The only way we can do that is by doing a full-on proposal, which means a 2D CAD design. I can't give you anything more than telling you it's going to be 20 or 30 or 40 or 60,000. I have to do a design to give you an exact number. Otherwise, I'm just guessing. So they have a choice there, and that consultation, again, the consultation to date has been free. And I had them a form, retainer fee. I'm sorry, it's called a retainer agreement. It spells out the fees there, what I provide for those fees, and what their options are when we meet again. So we'll meet again at our distributor, an indoor showroom. Once the proposal has been completed, at that point, I'll have at least probably 2 designs built a proposal based on materials they picked out during consultation. And I'll get a few upsells as well, different line items, or let's say we're doing a paver patio. And they think they want Techo Blocks Blue 60, which is a very standard paver we use a lot. I might throw in an option for Everest, which is something that's almost double the cost of Blue 60, maybe natural stone. There are a few different options. When they walk into a showroom, anything they looked at in the brochure during our consultation that they expressed some interest in, I'm going to at least put it in there as an option. So there's a section in our proposal that says other options, and there will be one section substitute other wall block. There'll be 3 other types of wall block listed there. Same way for pavers. There'll be some other options, and that depends on the project, what it might be, whether it's adding a water feature, whether it's going from a pergola to an attached roof. All different options might be buried in that proposal. So when we meet again at the distributor, then we leave that meeting with a pretty clear sense of where we're going. We've kind of honed down what that design is going to look like. We got a pretty good idea of materials that we're choosing. And I may or may not be collecting a check on that first meeting, or say that on that first proposal review. And generally, they're not signing a contract. Once in a while they do, but 90% of the time, there's enough changes made to the proposal for materials or different options. I don't want a whole bunch of markups on the contract. I just go home and update that proposal and send it to them for signature.
Yeah, I mean, lots of interesting things there, from talking to the clients, especially talking about previous contractor experiences. That can be really telling to understand whether that's a client for you or not. If they're having more than multiple difficulties with contractors, it might not be the contractors in that case, and that might not be the client that you want to move forward with. You touched on consultation fees. You touched on meeting with the client and discussing proposal. Lots of interesting things there. So when it comes time to, you mentioned the deposit and moving on with the project. How do you continue with larger projects in terms of payment plans? Is it unique to the project? Do you have a typical payment plan that you try to set for each project? How does that work for you?
Let me back up. There's one step I missed in the whole sales process. After the initial consultation, I may or may not get that signed retainer agreement. Once in a while, there's going to be a client says, let me think about it. I'll get back to you. And that's fine. But when I go home or go back to the office, I know about what they're looking for. I will send them an email first with the list of references, and then I'll send a series of emails showcasing various projects. So I know if they're looking at, say, for example, Techo Blocks Blue 60 paver, again, standard paver for us, and they want this certain color. I'm going to send an email showcasing a project using those very colors. And I might have, it depends on the project. Let's say they're looking for a attached roof or a pavilion. I'll send a bunch of pictures saying, hey, here's what we've done in the past. What are you thinking for a ceiling? Do you want natural wood? Do you want cedar? Do you want a PVC material? Send an example. So that's kind of an intermediate step between me meeting at their home and proposal review at distributor. So that's sent right away after we met. And I tell them, is there anything you really fall in love with, something you think is just awesome in any of these projects, let me know. And I'll try and incorporate that feature into your design. Okay, now back to your question. How do I handle the payment process? So you don't get a spot in my schedule until you sign the contract and give me a deposit. There's been a couple times that I fudged that rule a little bit and always regretted it. Somebody said, "Oh, I'll get it to you when we're ready to start." But when no, that's not how it works. You're going to give me a signed contract, you can give me a deposit, or you're on my schedule. Simple as that. So the typical terms are 30, 50, 20. So 30% down when you sign the contract, and we'll do 50% midway in the project, final 20% when the project's wrapped up. Now, we will adjust that a little bit. So for, let's say, a $100,000 project, I don't know, I want to wait till halfway through the project to collect my 50%. So I might do 30, 25, 25, 20. I don't want that last payment to be very large. It's rare we have an issue, but if I do, and a customer is balking at final payment, I don't want that final payment to be very large. And also, if, let's say we're looking at projects going to be, for example, 200,000 or 300,000. Now, we don't do this very often at all, but let's say we did. Asking for 30%, say I need 60,000 right now, or 75,000. That might be a bit of a turnoff. It's a pretty big chunk they're handing to me without me putting boots on the ground. That might back off that 30% a bit and say, hey, you know what? We need 40,000 to even get started. So 40,000 to secure your place and schedule. It depends on the client, depends on the scope of the project. I'll adjust that a little bit. I might put more progress payments in, and I might back off the 30% deposit for a really, really large project. Again, put yourself in the consumer's shoes, handling a large study, you've got the contract, I live in Pennsylvania, so we've got the home improvement contractor law, I'm registered with that. They can track me down, they can find me. That's not an issue. But still, that's a bit intimidating to hand that large of a check over to somebody that you just trust me references. You don't really know this guy. So you got to respect that a little bit.
And you mentioned that series of emails that you'll send based on products that you might have talked about with the client and whatnot. Do you do the same thing with features? Because I've noticed that if I'm talking with a client and I talk with them about lighting, if they haven't seen lighting in an outdoor living space before, they might say, maybe, probably not though. But as soon as I show them, whether that's I take them to a job site and I show them the lighting or I send them a picture, immediately they need to have lighting on that project. Do you try to do that with the features as well to upsell them on lighting, fire features and all that?
To a certain extent, yes. So if they're looking for a fire feature or considering that, I'll send a picture, different types of fire pits we built. For lighting, for patio lighting, that's standard. Willowgate's built a patio, it's going to have lighting built into it. We might do one patio every, 4 or 5 years where a client is just, they will not spend anything for lighting. Like, you're spending all this money for the patio, why you want to have a party when the sun goes down? That's, enjoy your investment as long as you can. So there's a few people who will say no lighting, but generally it's simply included. Most of the pictures I send showcasing a project will show it in daylight and at night, so they can see what that project looked like with the lights on. One of the things I really like doing, we don't do a lot of it right now, is landscape lighting. So kind of basic starting point for us is going to be lighting your patio. Under cap lighting, maybe some lanterns on the piers. That's kind of starting point. If we're doing a structure, we're also always doing some lighting in the structure itself. At a minimum, it's going to have a ceiling light. If it's a outdoor pavilion, or if it's a attached roof, it's probably got a ceiling fan with a light kit. One of our trademarks has been up-down lights in every post, whether it's a pergola, whether it's a pavilion, just putting that in. Having that whole roof structure lit up at night is really, really cool. So that kind of sells itself. I sent a picture, okay, is how we laid the last structure. They want it. So yes, I do that. The next level for lighting, path lighting, that's pretty simple. That's an easy sell. But landscape lighting, going beyond just simply highlighting a few showpieces, like say highlighting Japanese maple, that's kind of typical. Anybody can do that. I like lighting 60-foot trees. That's just fun. getting the biggest well light I can. And if you got a perfect straight trunk tree, it's got 60 feet with no branches, and that's pretty much that changed the feel of the backyard. If there's a tree is a little distance away from the house, it kind of it brings the backyard closer in a sense, and yet it just it creates a bigger backyard visually, is what clients would tell me. So sending some pictures of that, like, hey, this is what, you've got these mature trees in your backyard. This is what it looks like if we light them up. So going back to your question, do I send pictures of features? Landscape lighting, yes. Some fire features. If there's some kind of special inlay, one project we did was a permeable paver driveway, and we did a 30-foot compass rose. That was fun. It was a lot of fun. And so saying something like that to somebody, hey, we can do a custom inlay. That's what it could look like. We'll do that.
Now, Jeremy, coming to my final question about specific to not necessarily specific to the sales process or payments. I ask this to every contractor that comes on the show. It can also be on the job site, but horror stories, something that has happened to you in your many years in business. I'm sure it would be, it's, as contractors, it's easy to find something in 1 year, but you've been in business for many more years than just that. It's not necessarily to like shine a light on Willow Gates Landscaping, because we all experience these things. It's to help contractors coming into business or contractors young in their business to understand what can happen and maybe put things in place to avoid or to prepare themselves for what can happen. Jeremy, do you have a horror story that you'd want to share with us?
How much time do you have? So we don't have many, okay? I've had a couple. So if you see a red flag, heed the red flag. Yeah. If you've got policies in place for contracts and down payments and they don't want to do that, heed the red flag. So I'll give a couple examples. One goes back quite a few years. And I will say this, the hungrier you are, the more likely you're going to be to bend your own rules. So we were close to the end of the season, but wasn't the end of the season. And we had no real projects in the pipeline, except for this one we're working on. It goes back to 2012. And I had one subcontractor coming in there to build a fireplace. And they're good people. Like, I don't need to mark up their price much. Oh, and the client, so a typical SRW wall, they wanted a masonry wall with stone veneer. So we brought in a mason for all of that, the fireplace, the wall, and they did a fine job. But I didn't mark them up much at all. They got a couple $100, no big deal. Now they're nice people, I know them. We trade work back and forth. Well, that fireplace can be a huge issue, not because there's anything wrong, but the client if I start back at the beginning, they were serious about the project. They had an approximate budget we're trying to reach, and we're pretty close to it. But he just didn't want to get the deposit and the signed contract to me. And there was one thing he wanted to insert in the contract. I forget what it was. They want to put some kind of little disclaimer there. I forget what it was. And I was like, sure, fine, whatever. Let it go. Should never have done that. So the problem with that job site is we didn't do everything in exactly the same order as we originally planned. There's a front walkway and a rear patio. And the plan had been to, I think, do the entire patio and then the front walkway. Well, just with the way it worked out with materials and with the sub coming in for the walls and the fireplace, we did the front walkway before the patio was completed. And they had a few points they wanted to argue about in that patio. So at one point, they had quite a bit of money that they had not paid because we didn't do things in exact sequence we said we would. So on a larger project now, if there's mobile trays coming in, if I think there could be a little bit of change in the order of how things are built, I will say so much is due when this feature is done. So if one feature's in the front yard, one's in the backyard, progress payments due when this is done. Not so I'm saying at this point in the entire project. That's one lesson I learned out of that. Another one, to this day, I don't know what the guy's problem was. I've been there to discuss a project. We had the price agreed upon, and he said he had me a signed contract and the deposit were ready to start. And this is actually a very recent project. And I don't know why I met my own rules. I really don't. This would have been in spring 2020. This was beginning of COVID, okay? And we had some projects on the books from before, but they needed to have building permits. And I could get a building permit, but I couldn't get inspections because everything building related was shut down for a period of time. So we were hunting for some work, and this one project seemed like a really good fit, adding a simple seating wall around a patio, doing some restoration to the patio. And I actually already dropped off the excavator. And he said, okay, I'll be work to you tomorrow. Next day, we're wrapping another project. And he tried calling me, I don't know, it was late morning. And I called him back mid-afternoon, and he was mad. Come pick up your equipment. I want you to do the job. So I don't really know what went sour there. I really don't. But another example of don't break your own rules. He didn't sign a contract, give me a deposit at least 3 days ahead of time. So why are they even considering doing that job? Well, I was a bit hungry, okay? We needed a hardscape job to go to, and I didn't have permits or couldn't get inspections for everything that's on the list. So I was feeling a little hungry, wanted to work for my crew, and I bet my own rules. So don't ignore those red flags.
Yeah.
That's probably my best advice to avoid these horror stories.
That's excellent.
If you're making changes to a project, document change orders, and the best thing to do is get the payment for that change order immediately, or with the next progress payment, don't let it go to the end of the project. You come down to the project, and if they did sign for all those change orders, they still have their mind that last final payment is going to be 20% of the project. And they agreed to those change orders, but man, now they've got an extra $10,000 to pay that they agreed to, but they didn't really make plans for it in their budget. Now they're trying to find the money. That project I gave an example of, I just kept finding little things to complain about. We had done design the fireplace, and one of the complaints was, "Oh, the hearth isn't deep enough. We need to extend the hearth." Okay, sure, we can do that. That means digging up the patio, pouring another extension to the concrete footer, and building back up, and it's going to cost you some money. Oh, no, we can't do that. We can't spend any more money. And that's kind of how the project went. They were out of money, and they doing any excuse they could find to avoid paying that final payment. It took me, I think, about 6 or 9 months to get the last of my money. There's very, very few projects that have cost me sleep. That's pretty rare. That was one of them.
Yeah, I mean, those are great stories that you shared there, especially in the time we're in right now with product shortages. That initial one you talked about really spoke to me because I had the same thing happen this year where product came in. The contract said, once the patio is done, I get my first progress payment, but this was for the steps to do. So we did the steps first. And then, luckily I had a good client there, but that is easy to run into, especially this past year, the year before, and I'm sure this coming year, and who knows until when. So excellent advice, Jeremy. I have 3 more questions for you here. So feel free to take as little as long as you want with these last questions. First one being tools, equipment, installation practices, anything that you want to talk about that you stand behind with Willow Gates Landscaping. That can be anything from a little tool to a big piece of equipment to installation practices that you really stand behind.
Good question. So that's a pretty far-ranging question there.
Yeah.
So as far as equipment, obviously I'm a big believer in dust control. I don't really sell that a whole lot to the client, although many of those people have been to our website, even though I talk a whole lot about it, we come out to our jobs like, oh, great, I want to see what you're doing with the dust control. So I've gone to our website and checked it out. That's a great way to differentiate yourself besides the whole requirement to do it by law. You can change it from a have to a want to. What are the benefits for you? What are the benefits to you as a company? You have happier clients. You aren't blowing dust all over their neighbor. Most people, if they're honest and they're sort of dust fly, will admit that at some point in their career, there's been a neighbor who's really, really upset about dust in their yard. It happens, okay? As far as other equipment, mini excavator, to me is indispensable. I can do a project without a skid steer. It's a little hard to do a project without the excavator. It's so much more efficient for digging, just everything. We used to rent for a number of years because I could not beat my rental guy's price. He was really, really cheap. And we would get the machine out, do excavation, send it back. Now we own a machine that stays on a job site pretty long through the process, and we use it for putting in base. We use it for setting big steps. We have seen a trend over the years towards big slab steps. If it weighs 700 pounds, you're not setting it by yourself. And some people try using skid steer forks. We were one of them, okay? And you end up chipping it. An excavator makes things so much easier. And the third thing I'd say for as equipment would be a good laser. Now, this is, sometimes there's tools where, in my opinion, they're not that great. It's a cool tool to have, so everybody buys it. So let's take, for example, zip level, smart level, U level, all different types of altimeters. They're a great tool for estimating, okay? Love it for that. I have one just for that purpose. It stays in my truck. It never shows up on the job site. It has two weaknesses. One, it can't do slopes. And two, you've got that core to deal with. So everybody says, well, we want to work off of 0. Well, so do I. But we have adjustable grade rods, so we're always working off of 0. When I go out to a job site for an initial consultation, I measure up that site, get all the elevations I'm going to need, and I'll set a benchmark. All the elevations are set off a certain benchmark. Typically, that's a door sill. And I'll do an elevation plan. So when my crew rolls onto the job site, there's no simple laser and figuring out elevations. It's all there in black and white on a printout that they have in their job packet. And it's also in the Google Drive folder we have for that project. So if they lost the papers, left the clipboard out in the rain, just open their phone, go into the folder, and they can see all the documents right there. So let's say typical project is going to have a retaining wall. It's going to have a patio that's sloped. It's going to have a fire pit. It might have footings for an attached roof or pavilion, all different elevations. They look at the print and it says what kind of slope we're using for the patio. It's all there in black and white. So set a laser to a certain percent, just go up to the benchmark, set the grade rod at 0, and then go to, say minus 27 inches. That's your bottom excavation. It's all right there. So having an accurate grading plan or elevation plan, to me, it saves so much time setting up that project. And at any point, for doing excavation, for doing the base, setting your screed guides for the bedding layer, that's all there in black and white. So there's no, oh man, I need to figure out the slope here. So the laser we use is a dual slope and it's auto slope. So all I need to do is pull up my remote, punch in the slope, and it's good to go. And there's no, oh, come out 10 feet, or we'll drop 2 inches across 10 feet or 3 inches. There's none of that manual figuring it out. Simply anywhere I go on that job site, anywhere in that patio, I can set that grade rod down and know exactly within 0.1 inch of where I'm supposed to be. In my opinion, using adjustable grade rod and dual slope laser is your most efficient method, short of using one of the tool position systems where you're using a GPS system where it really makes the laser obsolete. Again, going back to altimeter concept, I think they're great. They have a place, but on a construction job site, to me, they're a nuisance. They can't do slopes, and you got that cord following you everywhere. There's a few things where they're great. And if you have a really big elevation change, say over 6 foot, that avoids multiple laser setups. Or if you're going around 3 sides of a building, there's no line of sight issues. So there's a place where we might consider bringing our zip level out to a job site. But most times that stays in my truck and it's only used for estimating. So it's kind of 3 things I look at for equipment would be dust collection, using an excavator, and having a good laser and elevation plan. Moving on to installation, very much a fan of doing clean stone base, clear stone, hybrid, all different names for the same thing, basically. Today, our projects are probably 95% of them are permeable, at least partially permeable. That probably about 30 to 50% are actually fully permeable systems. Now we use clean stone, and we're using a joint fill that's permeable. We're mainly using that for efficiency and because we think we build a better product with it. But the side benefit, it's also permeable. So we've done a lot of marketing for permeable systems. And people call specifically for that. So clean stone can't be used everywhere, but almost everywhere. We were doing hybrid before it was even called hybrid. Like our first projects back, I think 2014, using clean stone with a polymeric sand joint fill, and we never looked back. One of the things I feel has helped Willow Gates grow, particularly in retaining our crew members, was offering year-round work. And I can clearly remember the year is 2015, sitting at a round table with other business owners. And it's a small group, I'm going to say 5 to 8 people. And as one business owner said, we work year round. I'm like, how do you do that? It's winter, we get snow. And I just couldn't fathom that being possible. And we kind of stayed in touch. And I think it's probably a year or so later that he invited me out to see his business. It's called Willow Landscaping, Millersburg, Pennsylvania. They're about 2 hours away from me, I think. And so I made a trip out there one winter. And it's kind of a low point personally in my business. We had some staff issues that kind of took the fun out of work, and kind of regroup and question myself on a lot of things. He's a great guy, really enjoy him. And he said, about working all winter. I said, how do you do that? And he said, well, you need a big pipeline. I said, well, it's just not possible. I can't see how you can do that. And it's only, I think, about 2 years later that was there, where I had so many leads in the pipeline, you pick and choose and say, this is a job I want for winter installation. Now, a permeable patio, permeable driveway is absolutely the best possible thing. We work on clean stone, doesn't matter if it freezes. It's mostly flat work, so there's no muddy banks you're sliding equipment off of. Again, you need to pick and choose which projects you want to do. So if I got a steep slope, automatically, I'm not doing the winter. I don't want my machine laying on its side, bottom of the slope. Not going there. We're trying to be efficient. We're going to lose some efficiency through the winter, not a lot, but again, pick and choose. And sometimes you need a little bit of incentive for people to do it in the winter time. So you'll have a client calls you, let's say August, and they want their job done this fall. Well, I'm sorry, Mrs. Smith, we're booking for December or November, and it's not late in the year. You're probably not going to enjoy it a whole lot. I got a little hole here in February. We work year round, but it's a little hard to fill that hole there in the schedule. People don't understand we work year round, and you're not going to enjoy your patio anyway. Would you consider waiting until February to get it done? And I might offer a very small discount. It's usually not much. I'll figure how much per hour I think I can sacrifice. It might be $500. If it's a really big project, maybe $1,500. It's not a huge amount. And try to get a little incentive there to do it in the winter. But that's been huge for us. Before, we would try to find some fill-in work for them for part-time work. Sometimes they want to get another job just for the winter. Then there's always a little conflict there. Their winter job, let's say, for example, one wanted to drive delivery truck for a heating oil company. Well, my season normally ended at that time around the end of the year. Well, they really needed him, early mid-December, and I was not all done with him yet. And then in the spring, when it's time to restart our season, we want to get started, say, beginning of March. Well, they still kind of needed him till end of March. So keeping the crew working year-round really made a career at Willow Gates Landscaping look a lot more attractive. They depend on having a paycheck year-round, and I can depend on them being there when I need them. So it can be hard. You need to do a lot of forethought, plan those projects well. There are jobs, again, that certainly don't work for winter installation, that you really need to wait until spring. But having a bunch of projects to pick from, and knowing the process to build in wintertime. So we have concrete blankets. We'll try to plan our excavation so we can dig out, compact the subgrade, and bring our geotextile on the same day. Hopefully get a little bit of stone in. But for example, if we have a project where the existing site is bare dirt, we got a hard freeze, we'll take blankets out there, cover the job site, and let it fall out, just so we can dig easier. Plan a little bit ahead will make it a lot easier. But it's well worth the effort.
Yeah, I mean, great points there. I've got nothing else to say with everything you talked about there. Excellent points. Final two questions here. Jeremy, anybody that you want to give a shout out here? Anybody that you look to from the very start of your career till now for inspiration, mentorship, whether that's online, offline, anybody that you want to give a shout out here?
I would say first and foremost would be Bill Bardacchi. He was probably the person that I admired the most and inspired me to become a teacher. He is a great instructor, very relatable, confident guy, no nonsense, just really respect him highly. So he's probably number one. Number two, probably Pay Pete from Tackle Block. Love him or hate him, he makes you think. And he can be a bit controversial sometimes, but he really does make you think. And I think he's brought some really good trends to the industry. Then there's different instructors over the years. Bart Shippey Engineering. Doing raised patios is really a completely different animal. And a lot of guys just understand the risk of destroying their client's home by building one. And Bart helped a lot. If you go back to a certain era, NCMA and ICPI were very much separate entities. And when you came to a system that combined both with a raised patio, nobody wanted to really set standards. And I feel like EP Henry, along with Bart Shippey, did a lot to set standards for raised patio construction way back into probably 2010, 2012, around there. They were setting some standards that nobody else wanted to touch. So those are probably three people I would say I have a lot of respect for that made a huge difference in my career.
Thank you, Jeremy. And my final question to you is not an easy one. Jeremy, you've been in this industry for a long time and you've been in business for a long time. But what is that one thing that you know now that you wish you knew from the very start, whether that is business related, personal related, because of business, anything that you want to talk about? But what is that one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the very start?
People matter. Relationships matter. So on our website, we actually put that on there, a kind of people first mantra. Relationships are important to us with our suppliers, with our employees, and with our clients. Those relationships matter a lot to us. But we talked a lot about technique, training. In the early years, we got really serious about continuing education as all focused towards installation. A little bit towards business management, estimating, but mostly installation. I wish I could have seen back then how important what you want to call soft skills, working with people, how important that was. So since then, I've taken a lot of more courses on working with people, reading books. I believe that the concept of servant leadership is a good one. I'm a Christian. I think it's a biblical concept of serving the people we lead. You can get burned out, Again, we're a small company, so people can make a really big difference in a small company. One person leaves, one person turns sour, one person's excellent. Whatever scenario you look at, one person makes a really, really big difference in a small company. And I look back at mistakes I've made over the years and say, if I would have had some of the tools back then that I have now, when I say tools, I mean knowledge of working with people, I made mistakes. I really did. And I think that if I would take more management courses, learning how to work with people more effectively, it would have helped a lot. It really would have.
That's something that hasn't been talked about enough on this podcast, and something that really needs to be in the forefront, especially if you want to grow as a business, as a person, and so much more. So, Jeremy, thank you so much for sharing that. And Jeremy, where can our audience go to find out more about you, yourself, everything that you got going on? Dust Killer Tools, Willow Gates Landscaping, anywhere you want to send them, where would that be?
Okay, so we are most active on Facebook and Instagram. So Instagram, it is Willow Gates Landscaping and Dust Killer Tools. On our website, it is willowgateslandscaping.com. And for Dust Killer Tools is dustkiller.tools. So a different extension there. Again, that's dustkiller.tools. For all the courses I teach, that is on the events page on dustkiller.tools. So if you go to our website, dustkiller.tools/events, all the courses I teach are on the schedule there. So if you want to follow me, if you want to take any courses, ICPI, NCMA, anything I'm teaching is there. If you have questions, I'd say on Facebook, particularly for Willow Gates, that's really consumer oriented. As far as interaction with contractors, that's probably more on Instagram for Willow Gates and for Dust Killer Tools.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Go check out more from Jeremy Martin at willow_gates_landscaping on Instagram, as well as dust_killer_tools on Instagram. And let us know what you would want to learn more about on this podcast by reaching out to us at How to Hardscape on our social channels. You can now rate this podcast directly on the Spotify app. 5 stars is always greatly appreciated if you can go ahead and do that if you're listening on Spotify. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.